Hello and welcome to Global Business, coming to you live from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. We begin as always with a look at the markets. The JSE rose along with most global equity markets today, receiving a boost from news at the weekend that the US will not impose tariffs on Mexico over the lack of security at the mutual border. The all-share gained 0.59% to 58,442.30 points. Banks added 2.05% and general retailers 2.77%, while gold miners lost 3.77% and platinum index 2.25%. Coming up on the show tonight, Ethiopia to liberalize its telecommunications sector. Civil society groups oppose plan to build the Uganda oil pipeline. And the pastry shop in Senegal that's not just serving sweet treats, but a new way to finance business too. We begin in Ethiopia, where Parliament is set to approve a law covering the liberalization of the state-controlled telecom sector. The move is the first concrete sign of progress on economic reforms pledged by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed shortly after he took office in April 2018. Parliament is discussing comments made on the draft telecom law and is expected to approve the proclamation. Let's discuss this further with Frewot Tamiru. She is the CEO of Ethio Telecom, joining us live from Addis Ababa. First off, how do you feel about this new law to open up Ethiopia's telecoms market?
Thank you, Peninah, for reaching me out. The whole purpose of having the new proclamation is to facilitate the telecom reform that we are hoping that it will bring more operators to the telecom market here in Ethiopia. For the last 125 years, we have been serving our nation with a sole operator, and the regulatory has been regulating us with the existing proclamation. So the main purpose and objective of this the new proclamation is to facilitate the reform, the telecom reform, which is going to be open for more operators here in our market. That's the whole purpose.
Right. So your company, Ethio Telecom, boasts over 60 million mobile subscribers. And with this new law, it means you're bound to face competition for the first time ever. Are you ready for it? And how are you planning to capitalize on the development?
We're not afraid of the competition. We're making ourselves ready for the different tomorrow, I would say. And I believe the competition will bring us a better opportunity. Of course, there will be a lot of challenge as we have been working in a single or a sole operator and serving our nation. So we're making ourselves ready for the competition in terms of expanding our product portfolio, also expanding our network infrastructure to be able to face the competition and to get the most benefit out of the reform.
The world is now...
Today we have a capacity of... okay?
Yeah, go on, go on.
Okay, today we have a network capacity that can serve up to 68 million subscribers, and we have an active mobile subscribers of 42 million. And as you know, our population is more than 100 million, and still we have a huge...
All right, I'm afraid we've lost that signal. Quite a pity, but we had there Frewot Tamiru, the CEO of Ethio Telecom, discussing with us what she thinks about that new law to liberalize the country's telecom sector. Let's now turn to Sudan, where a general strike is currently underway. Residents in the capital city of Khartoum have mostly remained indoors, and the downtown business district was largely shut on Sunday. Sudanese police fired tear gas at protesters taking part in the first day of a civil disobedience campaign.
Empty streets, shops and markets closed. A stark contrast to what has been witnessed in Khartoum over the past weeks. The Sudanese Professionals Association has called on people to stay home to protest last week's deadly crackdown against protesters. It says the campaign is another escalation of non-violence resistance and a message to the ruling military council to hand over power to a civilian-led administration.
The blockades are disturbing, but the people are expressing what is in their heart.
In a sign of possible panic, long queues were seen outside petrol pumps and shops as residents rushed to stock up.
We are calling upon the youth to remove the barricades and the streets will be opened, so we will live in peace and then we will rebuild Sudan.
Several international players are trying to mediate the crisis. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed recently held separate meetings with the two sides, calling for quick democratic transition. Chomgono, CGTN.
More than 5,000 delegates from around the world, as well as heads of states, are attending the International Labour Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. This year's event also marks 100 years of the organization. Heads of several African nations are in attendance and spoke on the opening day. Julia Lubova reports.
The future of work is the theme for this year's International Labour Conference in Geneva. The event is attended by more than 5,000 delegates from around the world and 44 heads of states and other dignitaries. Over the next 10 days, they will try to find solutions to the challenges of the future of work and also to approve new rules to stop violence and harassment in the workplace. They will also celebrate the 100th anniversary of the International Labour Organization. The presidents of South Africa and Ghana spoke on the opening day of the conference. In his speech, Ghana's President Akufo-Addo set out Ghana's contribution to the future of the world of work. The president of South Africa said that the International Labour Organization was a source of practical support and guidance. Cyril Ramaphosa said that the principle of social justice has recently been demonstrated at a court in South Africa where a multi-million-dollar agreement was reached between mining workers and 5 mining companies over ill health. He also noted other threats and issues in a modern workplace such as robotics and gender inequality. Delegations will be working on these issues over the coming days, and a non-binding centenary declaration is expected to be adopted at the end. The conference will also be addressed by dignitaries from Tunisia, Burkina Faso and Mali over the coming days, as well as by several European leaders. Julia Lubova, CGTN, Geneva.
In some corporate headlines, Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission has ordered the suspension of Wando's annual shareholder meeting scheduled for June 11th. The regulator says the delay is due to the ongoing investigation into financial infractions. A Lagos federal court recently blocked the SEC from taking action against the company, pending further hearings on the case. Employees at Lonmin have returned to work following months of uncertainty after takeover by Sibanye in 2017. The deal was challenged by one of the largest mining unions, Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union. The takeover of Lonmin is now formally completed, making the merged entity a larger source of platinum with assets in South Africa, Zimbabwe and the US. Kenya Airways has announced plans to double its fleet over the next 5 years as the loss-making carrier combats regional rivals. The state-owned carrier restructured its debt in 2017 and is opening new routes in efforts to return to profit. It is also restructuring its aircraft leasing agreements and its other debts to free up cash for investment in new planes. And French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire says it is necessary to preserve the alliance between Renault and Japan's Nissan Motor Company. This is due to the benefits witnessed by the French automaker in synergies and technology. Fiat Chrysler recently called off its merger with Renault, citing interference by the French government. And that's a look at your corporate headlines. You're watching Global Business. Coming up. Civil society groups oppose plan to build the Uganda oil pipeline. And Tunisia launches program to encourage energy saving in public corporations.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sudanese. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Rwanda says it has reopened its busiest border post with Uganda to cargo trucks for 12 days starting this Monday. The statement came more than 3 months after the border was closed amid tensions between the two neighbors triggered by security and economic disagreements. At the end of February, Rwanda started blocking Ugandan cargo trucks from entering at the crossing, which Rwandans call Gatuna and Ugandans call Katuna. Authorities in Kigali also stopped Rwandan nationals from traveling to Uganda. Rwandan officials say they will decide after 2 weeks whether to reopen the border permanently, adding that Rwandans were, however, still banned from traveling to Uganda. About 30 local and international campaign groups have petitioned two banks to abandon plans to raise funds to build an oil pipeline from Uganda. The activists say the project, considered vital to developing Uganda's oil reserves, could damage local livelihoods, water resources and wildlife. South Africa's Standard Bank Group and Japan's Mitsui Banking Corporation are seeking to raise funds to finance the $3.5 billion pipeline. It will be about 1,500 kilometers long, running from oil fields in Uganda to the port of Tanga in Tanzania. Uganda's oil reserves are estimated to hold 6 billion barrels. Development has been slow due to disagreements between the government and oil firms about strategy. The world's environment is firmly under the spotlight during this environmental month. Recently, Coca-Cola announced ambitious plans to recover and recycle a large proportion of their single-use plastics. The plan for Africa is being implemented through business units called PETCOs, or pet recycling companies. $12 million has already been invested in getting these operations off the ground. Angela Coppola reports.
There are 15 countries involved in the project. South Africa and Kenya have established recycling operations, while Ethiopia, Tanzania will come on stream soon. The group also has contracts with recyclers. However, the scale of the problem is huge.
PET bottles, as you know, is a pack of choice for the consumer. It is very popular, it's safe, convenient, and it's cheap to manufacture. It's a low carbon footprint pack, but it's non-returnable. We have a big portion of our plastic being non-returnable, and that's why our efforts are to collect and recycle these bottles.
Environmentalists aren't convinced that companies that produce single-source plastics are doing enough.
The point of the pollution, or the point of the source of the plastic pollution, is with the companies, and that's where the change actually needs to happen. It's not saying there's no room for recycling, but is the investment at the right place? And is the responsibility put in the right hands, which is the people? So they're not doing enough, absolutely not.
In Coca-Cola's case, the South African operation produces around 58,000 tons of preforms and bottles annually. It's understood that their South African Petco business collects around 100 tons of single-use plastics.
We are collecting other people's bottles. So, and that is the example, the South Africa example is what we're rolling out on the rest of the continent. We want also all other countries, and we have started, as I said, in Kenya. In Mozambique, we're going to be 100% this year already. Namibia, we'll be close to 50. So we're in every country working on a project on collecting back all our bottles.
Environmentalists suggest that companies look at their manufacturing processes differently.
They should be thinking more about how they're going to reduce and reuse. And we always hear it, reduce, reuse, and recycle. They've gone to the end of the sequence of actions that you can actually do. And what we're saying is that if they focus on reducing, really, which is eliminating plastic, and they've got targets and ambitious targets around there as Coca-Cola on how they're going to do that and how soon they're going to do it. Because they do have ambitions around by 2025, there's a 50% of what they produce is going to be made from recycled materials. What are they doing now in 2019, in 2020?
While corporates and environmentalists continue arguing about the right approach to saving the world's environment, the issue right now is single-use plastics. That issue has to be resolved sooner rather than later. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Chinese business is flourishing in Botswana as goods from the Asian country gain in popularity. Some businessmen from China are now setting up production plants to process local raw material. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi reports from Botswana's capital, Gaborone.
Chinese goods are emerging as popular items of trade among the people of Botswana, with private Chinese businessmen and women exporting in increasing quantities of a wide variety of products directly into the Botswana market. Chinese inroads into the Botswana market is being viewed by local citizens as a win-win situation, since many benefit from what they say is cheap and yet fashionable products.
The Chinese products they're fashionable. I would say they're very cheap. We take them and go and sell to other people who are very far.
Exports from Botswana to China stood at $16 million in 2017, while China's export to Botswana for the same period amounted to approximately $60 million. To further boost trade with the southern African country, China is exempting import tariffs on some commodities from Botswana so as to facilitate their entry into the Chinese market, further improving relations with Beijing.
I was here early on, that was about 18 years ago. It wasn't as more friendly as now, so I can see there's a lot of things improving, especially the relationship.
Alicia Shongna is a prosperous Chinese businesswoman based in Botswana's capital, Gaborone. Her store attracts hundreds of people daily.
We all give them like the warehouse price. You understand, here is warehouse, so everything is cheap, everything is going to give them profit, some things, so them is like by here.
It's quite busy nowadays, because of the foreign customers, like Lesotho customers, Zambians, and few of Zimbabwe customers.
Price-sensitive businessmen and women in Botswana continue to welcome the easy availability of low-priced Chinese goods. China and Africa remain in close consultation and cooperation in safeguarding the common interest of the continent and the Asian country. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Gaborone, Botswana.
If you have craving for sweet things, honey is one thing to go for. In Uganda, honey enthusiasts grace the annual honey tasting event, savoring a wide bounty of honey from across the country. Leon Sanyange reports.
As sweet as honey. With every scoop, a delightful pleasure. For Anne and Fraser, it's been a thrilling experience testing Ugandan honey.
And there's a garlic one as well, which I really want to try because I think that would be really nice with like savoury stuff. So I didn't know there were so many different flavours, tastes. Really nice.
The unique array of honey flavours got Alexander Chiza buzzing.
My favorite is the one with the OD, or we call Pia. This, it has been so well because I've been taking OD without honey. But now when you get it and it's mixed up with honey, it adds on the already sweetness that's there.
The honey testing event is in its second year. It aims at promoting honey and other honey products. It is gradually catching on. The several varieties of honey here have teased the revelers' taste buds. The focus now for the exhibitors is to get more honey into people's homes. Sandra Ejang is a bee farmer and honey entrepreneur. Ejang is the brains behind the honey testing event. She says increased healthy eating habits among Ugandans have led to more demand.
Honey is a very big thing in our homes because it takes care of all those issues. It helps to prevent the common cold, taken regularly. It is a good bread spread. You don't have to buy Blue Band, so you keep the family healthy. It's an alternative for sugar.
According to the Uganda Honey Beekeepers Association, over 5,000 metric tons of honey is produced per year. Improving bee farming could increase the stock-ups, and with that, plenty to savor for the honey lovers. Leon Sanyangi, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
The Tunisian government and the National Electricity and Gas Company have launched a national project to encourage energy saving in public corporations. They also want more adoption of renewable energies. Authorities say the cost of energy has increased the state budget and affected the country's financial balances. Adnan Shawashi reports.
The Prime Ministry issued a circular calling on companies and public institutions to rationalize energy consumption in order to contribute to the national effort in this area in the light of the rise in hydrocarbon prices on the world market.
The circular recommends that the role of energy manager in companies and public institutions be given the required efficiency. The latter is mainly responsible for controlling energy consumption in all areas: heating, air conditioning, ignition, in addition to maintaining energy-saving equipment.
Authorities emphasize the need to rationalize the consumption of fuels reserved for the various administrative means of transport.
The initiative aims to equip companies which have a large fleet of vehicles with the necessary means to carry out energy audits of engines and to establish internal fleet control systems to identify in time the cause of high energy consumption.
The government has called for the need to ensure the periodic maintenance of heating and air conditioning equipment before its use and to use renewable energies as much as possible.
State agencies want to ensure that energy-efficient means are used as an indicator for determining purchases and compliance with the temperature levels, 20 degrees for heating and 26 degrees for cooling. The state will also offer incentives to encourage renewable energy use.
Tunisia's energy deficit is due to the evolution of national energy consumption, in particular with the improvement of the standard of living, the increase in the use of air conditioners and heaters, in addition to the decrease in local oil production by 40% compared to 2010 due to the weakness of exploration activities. According to the Ministries of Energy and Trade, Tunisia suffers from an energy deficit that reaches 1/3 of the trade deficit, exceeding $6 billion in 2018. Authorities say the deterioration in the energy balance has contributed 65% to the widening trade deficit. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to Somalia now, and the country's first ever floating restaurant is attracting many people in Mogadishu to visit Lido Beach. The floating restaurant has become an attraction site in the capital, Mogadishu. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo joined a group of young people and now reports.
On the sandy shores of Mogadishu, a floating restaurant has become the latest attraction in a city often associated with conflict. And the La Lantana is a modern boat tailored to accommodate families, couples, as well as large group of tourists who wish to dine in the Indian Ocean.
This ship has enough capacity to carry many people who come here for tourism purposes. We came up with the idea because it's only small skiffs which operate here. The ship makes numerous trips within Mogadishu and beyond. It goes all the way to Washik, Jazeera, and deep in the sea.
Hussein and his wife Hani are here to enjoy their weekend and have even invited some of their friends and colleagues from work to experience this floating restaurant at the famous Lido Beach.
I'm here today with my wife. We always look forward to coming here in the evening and during weekends to pass time. We also come with our friends to enjoy touring the city.
This is a good initiative, one that has been highly welcomed by many. We hope to see more luxury boats like this so that families can enjoy more.
Abdi Fattah Hassan says the floating restaurant is a testimony of recent progress made in stabilizing Mogadishu and wants increased investments to boost the local tourism industry.
This is a reflection of the peace and progress taking place in the city, and we hope to see more positive developments like this. Once peace is achieved, young people will require leisure activities, and this is a perfect meeting spot for the youth.
Young people also come here to share positive developments on their social media accounts by taking pictures and posting them with several hashtags, including Mogadishu Rising, that has become popular on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. This is the country's first ever floating restaurant and quite popular mainly among young people. For just a few dollars, one gets to enjoy a 2-hour-long boat ride in the Indian Ocean and get to experience the beautiful seaside capital of Mogadishu.
As young people, we always look forward to coming to the beach. This floating restaurant is good for us. We come here as a group from work to pass time and enjoy the view.
Years of violence has virtually destroyed the tourism industry for a nation with pristine beaches and one of the longest coastlines in mainland Africa. But young people in the city want to change the perception many have of their country and want the world to see Somalia for what it has to offer. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
This is Global Business, coming up after the break. China and Central and European countries seek better trade and exchanges under the Belt and Road Initiative. And finance leaders from the G20 pledge to protect global growth.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Peninah Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. See, business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Let's look at the top stories of the day. At least 100 people have been killed in an attack on a village in the central part of Mali. Security agencies say the attack was carried out in a village inhabited by ethnic Dogon people. Fulani herders are being blamed for the incident. Frequent clashes between Fulani and Dogon people have led to deaths of hundreds of locals. In March, 130 Fulani herders were killed in a retaliatory act that was blamed on Dogon hunters. Rescue efforts are underway at a gold mine in the east of Tanzania after 5 miners died when it collapsed over the weekend. 5 others are being treated in hospital. It is an unlicensed mine in the Morogoro region, and it is not known how many people are trapped underground. The authorities are reported to have ordered the closure of the mine. Regional Commissioner Kebwe Stephen Kebwe has said people flocked to the area after the discovery of gold deposits there. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been hailed for his efforts to end the iron-fisted rule of his predecessors. But the loosening of the reins has had a far darker side as years of tensions between ethnic groups who are divided into 9 autonomous regions have boiled over. And in Sudan, 3 members of a rebel movement have been deported to South Sudan. The 3 had been detained in the wake of a deadly breakup of a protest camp in Khartoum. This comes as shops and businesses remain shut for the second day as opposition groups continue with a campaign of civil disobedience. And that's a wrap of the day's top stories. China and Central and European countries continue to seek better trade and exchange under the Belt and Road Initiative. During the first China CEEC Expo, think tanks and researchers are discussing the achievements and challenges that people face in enhancing trade between China and the Committee for European Economic Cooperation. CGTN's Ning Hong reports.
Almost every day, cargo trains set off from Yiwu, the largest distribution center of small commodities in China, carrying tens of millions of goods between China and Europe. In 2018, over 25,000 containers were sent.
Our customers are mainly from inland cities in Europe. Goods have a tight schedule for delivery, and sometimes a short expiration date. Things like olive oil from Spain or beer should be sent by train, as it takes 20 to 30 days less than shipping.
This has given rise to trade between China and Central and Eastern European companies, as many are along the route.
We opened a route to Prague in 2017, and from there, as a center, the trade is rising fast.
It's not just by rail route either. Trade between China and Central and Eastern European countries has taken a leap in recent years, increasing by over 50% since 2011. China is also working on balancing the trade, bringing mutual benefits to both sides. China imports from CEEC companies are growing even faster, increasing by 87% since 2011.
Countries in Central and Eastern Europe are very important to China. They have a very good industrial base and a developed cultural and business environment. They are good partners.
More Chinese tourists are flocking to the beautiful natural environment in Central and Eastern European countries. And the products from there are also favored by Chinese consumers. And the cooperation goes even deeper, from commodities to technology. Yet there's still some obstacles that both the government and companies need to face.
Part of it is just the cross-cultural understanding. So how do Chinese companies understand what it's like working in a whole variety of countries in the Belt and Road? Also, another thing is actually how do you find good information and get good information flows to and from those countries? And then I think the final thing that I'd really emphasize is a need for Chinese companies to think about the wider stakeholders than they might do in China. You need to think about the local communities in ways which in China maybe people know how to do. You need to look at that and take notice of that, and maybe sometimes get an international accreditation or verification that you are acting in a responsible way.
The investment in Central and Eastern European countries from China increased by over 60% in 2018 from what it was a year earlier, a vital sign that shows the great potential lies ahead. Ning Hong, CGTN, Ningbo.
Finance leaders from the G20 have pledged to protect global growth as they wrapped up a meeting in Japan. In a joint statement, they said global growth appears to be stabilizing but remains low, especially with increasing trade and geopolitical conflicts. They noted global imbalances have narrowed but remain large and persistent. For the first time, the G20 tackled the issue of aging as a potential risk to growth. It urged countries to encourage more women and the elderly to join the labor market. Meanwhile, ministers also promised to work to create a fair international tax system. They also highlighted the benefit of technological innovations.
30 hours of fiery negotiations covering thorny economic issues. Finance ministers from across the world gathered in the Japanese city of Fukuoka over the weekend, trying to figure out a future path for the global economy. One of their major concerns was, of course, the ongoing tensions between the world's two largest economies.
The bad news is that it is unclear how the US and China trade talks will end, and unless it is resolved, there's a concern that market confidence could be affected further, and this is an issue.
Yet many are frustrated by Washington's overall indifference to the issue.
Almost everybody in the room thinks that the trade tensions are a threat to growth. Everybody believes that. That's not obviously always the mood in the American administration.
And the Americans got their way in the end. Despite all the attention, the meeting's final statement excluded language from a previous draft mentioning a, quote, pressing need to resolve trade tensions. Sources said the deletion came at Washington's insistence. However, the finance leaders noted the risks from trade and geopolitical tensions were intensifying, and they hoped the global growth would pick up later this year and continue into next. Meanwhile, the leaders of China and the US, Presidents Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, are due to meet at the G20 summit in Japan later this month. Decisive talks which could determine the direction of the trade war.
One of the issues facing many countries now is how best to regulate the increasing use of digital currencies. In Australia, the government is taking steps to ensure users of cryptocurrencies pay their share of taxes and use them legally. Greg Navarro has more.
It's a new high of $9,090.
When Fred Sebesta looks at the value of digital currencies, the co-founder of global brokerage Hivex sees enormous potential.
It's not going anywhere. This is just about to get bigger and bigger.
The Australian government is also looking at the increasing use of cryptocurrencies. It estimates that up to 1 million Australians have invested in crypto assets. Australia is among a global effort to try and regulate their use.
They don't want to completely ban cryptocurrency. They think that there is some innovation in there. They don't want to completely remove that sector.
The Australian Tax Office is in the process of ensuring that users adhere to tax guidelines. The ATO is also concerned with the illegal use of cryptocurrencies to do things such as move funds within the black economy and hide money offshore.
That's the main fear. It's crime and also the use for terrorism in Australia.
It also says it's working with a global tax enforcement effort involving several countries aimed at investigating cryptocurrency-related tax evasion and money laundering.
All currencies have a degree of black market transactions. Cash is probably the number one system today where money is laundered, and there has been several banking institutions of recent that have been, I guess, that this has been a major concern for them.
Fred Sebesta welcomes the push to better regulate the use of digital currencies.
It brings about more legitimacy, it makes it more transparent, and it makes this use case even better and better over time.
He also sees the increasing effort to regulate cryptocurrencies as an acknowledgement of their value, not just financially, but as a technology and method of transaction that will continue to grow. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
The United Arab Emirates has launched a so-called Golden Card permanent residency program aimed at a select group of foreigners who have invested a combined $27 billion in the country. The program is designed to stimulate the UAE economy, and it will be extended later to a variety of skilled professionals as well. Jacob Greaves has more from Dubai.
A growing number of expats may soon be able to call the UAE home permanently. Investors appear to be the immediate beneficiaries of the residency program, but skilled professionals in fields such as medicine, engineering and science are also set to be eligible. It comes as the UAE, alongside its Gulf neighbours, face more challenging futures, adjusting to lower oil prices and less reliance on state spending.
The UAE economy is slowing down. We're still working with a growth rate around 2% for this year. Last year it was 1.7. So such a growth rate compared before 2014 is not very high. It's not enough to create enough jobs. And I know that many expats left the UAE, as in the case in Saudi Arabia, around 1.5 million expats left the country. So hopefully, beyond the near term, things could change and growth will accelerate, driven by the private sector, and mainly because of this measure, which will encourage investment in the non-energy sector and will create new SMEs.
Last year, the UAE announced 5- and 10-year visas for some investors, but this notable shift in policy could be timely. In its fourth quarter economic review for 2018, the UAE's central bank acknowledged job creation has softened in some labour-intensive private sectors. But just as the UAE isn't alone in facing tougher economic conditions in the Gulf, it's also not the only regional power trying to lure in foreign talent and money. Neighbour Saudi Arabia has been embarking on its own diversification drive.
Definitely there's competition. We've seen Saudi coming back from nowhere and honestly achieving huge milestones in terms of regulation, reforms, ease of doing business, and finally the green card, and which we believe ultimately is the solution to address the challenge of keeping the population in this country engaged, investing and saving at the same time. So measures like the green card probably ultimately will be the measures to be taken even in the UAE.
In both Saudi Arabia and the UAE, such measures have been seen by analysts as a step in the right direction. But only time will tell how far the proposed reforms actually go, and whether the UAE's golden card can help its economy shine. Jacob Greaves, the CGTN in Dubai.
The battle for the next generation of video game consoles is on. Microsoft has unveiled its new Xbox, now simply known as Project Scarlet. What's so special about it? Our Lily Liu takes a closer look.
So let's talk about our next console.
The device will be 4 times more powerful than the present Xbox One X. The new console's customized AMD chip allows it to blaze 120 frames per second and a solid-state drive which will provide faster loading than its older mechanical drives.
This is Project Scarlet, the most powerful and highest performing console we've ever designed. Built for creators to unleash their boldest creative visions and optimized for players to enjoy the ultimate gaming experience on a console anywhere.
The console is backward compatible, meaning gamers can continue to play Xbox One X games on it. Along with the new Xbox, Microsoft also said its game streaming service Project X Cloud will go into preview in October. That is 1 month earlier than rival Google Stadia game streaming service. However, both Google Stadia and Xbox's X Cloud have some gamers worried because of the slow home internet speeds.
I do know that the teams are working really hard to try to test all of that, because the whole point of it is if it feels like you're sacrificing something, then it's not going to be a great experience. So I know that the teams are definitely looking to use the preview that's launching in October to learn and understand where our kind of the dead spots are, how do we think about controls, like really kind of learning, using that moment to learn and then refine the plan as it gets bigger and bigger.
The biggest screams of the presentation came when Hollywood actor Keanu Reeves suddenly appeared in footage from the upcoming Cyberpunk 77 and then appeared on stage.
Probably the most exciting part was when, Keanu Reeves showed up to bring in, to usher in the date for Cyberpunk 2077, show us a new look at the game. But I like to think that across the board, we actually created a space where we really delivered on our promise of showcasing tons of great content that is playable across whatever device the gamers out there want to play it on.
Microsoft's Xbox One sales is less than half of rival Sony's PlayStation 4, and that is quite a disappointment compared with the success of the console's predecessor, Xbox 360. The battle for the next gen is about to begin, and Microsoft has fired the first shot by unveiling its new console. When Sony will show the world its PS5 remains unknown. Lililu, CGTN.
The annual Shanghai TV festival has kicked off with a forum focusing on the latest changes in China's television industry. One of the liveliest of barbs is the flourishing of internet productions. CGTN's Xu Mengqi reports.
The annual Shanghai TV festival, now in its 25th year, once again opens to the public. This time at the opening forum, industry professionals agreed on a new trend that underscores recent TV development in China: the ongoing success of internet applications.
One case in point, TV shows. Say you've just decided to watch a drama and you go on to any of China's online streaming platforms. There are a myriad of options to choose from, not only those broadcast on TV, but also some tailored for the web.
By allowing audiences to leave real-time comments on the screen, digital platforms offer an essentially more interactive viewing experience, which in turn is impacting production crews.
Previously, when I was producing for TV stations, I only saw and heard audience feedback in later reports. Not like this face-to-face feeling now. It helps us to reflect more.
The internet productions generally meet the audience faster, too.
Take my last drama. We had just finished post-production at the end of last month, and probably it'll be released in a month or two. We could have never imagined this speed before.
The faster turnover rate is definitely a big draw for investors, but TV professionals also have their concerns over the eruptive growth of new media.
Because internet productions are still at an underdeveloped stage, there are all kinds of programs. Some value speed over quality.
The challenge, experts say, is to improve content quality of internet productions while preserving originality. Xu Mengqi, CGTN, Shanghai.
Let's have a look at the commodities market, and oil prices rose today after Saudi Arabia said OPEC and Russia should keep supplies restricted at current levels. There was also relief after the U.S. withdrew a tariff threat against Mexico, removing a cloud over the global economy. And despite Monday's increases, traders said concerns about the health of the global economy and its impact on fuel demand still weigh on oil market sentiment. Gold, on the other hand, retreated from a 14-month peak today after that agreement between the U.S. and Mexico crimped safe haven demand for the metal. Still ahead on Global Business. The pastry shop in Senegal that's not just serving sweet treats, but a new way to finance business too.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Let's head now to the Senegalese holy city of Touba, where a new bakery is enjoying unprecedented success. It is not just specializing in decadent pastries and sweets, but also introducing locals to a new way of financing their businesses. Uche Koronko has that story.
Fresh croissants and delicate pastries have landed in Touba, one of Senegal's most populated cities. Omervale is the holy city's first high-end patisserie.
Before, I used to go to Dakar or send someone to get good pastries. But since Omervale's, I don't anymore. Now I come here every day or every 2 days to get my supplies of pastries.
These are families who live in these regions, middle-class families, low-class families, more well-off families who have the same needs as those who live in capital cities. And here, we are talking about finding a croissant, buying quality bread, buying a birthday cake for one's child, which is like running an obstacle course in cities outside Dakar, which should not be the case.
What really sweetens the deal for locals here is that this new business is 40% financed by crowdfunding, a new idea in this part of the world. M&A Capital, an investment fund and majority investors in Omervale, managed to convince dozens of crowdfunding investors that a startup like this that involves the local community in a shared project would not only provide employment for the city's youth, but also improve the quality of life for residents.
In Senegal, there's a big problem. There's no local economy. Now, when I say local economy, I mean everything is concentrated in Dakar, when in fact there's huge potential. They were spot on to open this Omervale in Touba, where there's purchasing power, there's demand. There was nothing here before. And so it was an extremely innovative move and very interesting to invest outside of Dakar to create a local economy in places that have economic potential.
Crowdfunding is not new worldwide, but in Senegal, it's still in its early stages. According to M&A, that is partly due to Senegal's tradition and customs, where people prefer to lend to family members and friends and not to strangers. There's also no regulatory framework to define the crowdfunding rules. From these modest beginnings, M&A Capital plans to not only corner the market in patisseries, but also turn African SMEs into Pan-African multinationals.
The work that needs to be done here in Senegal and everywhere else in Africa is huge. It's more about getting the maximum number of people around the project and also to provide inspiration for the other layers. That is the idea and the path that really guided this crowdfunding project, in order to say we can do it ourselves, but we have the opportunity to show that crowdfunding is an important lever that impacts our economies.
He says the endgame is to build Omervale into the Starbucks of Senegal. Sa believes that in 5 years' time, they will be well placed to position themselves on the regional securities exchange, the BVRM, and go for IPOs. In Africa, where access to early-stage capital is practically non-existent, crowdfunding projects like these can in fact provide a good solution to the funding gap. Once properly regulated, they could also enable the diaspora to invest directly in businesses back home. For Touba's Omervale customers, they're just happy they can finally eat cake that rivals what the capital, Dakar, has to offer. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN.
There's been a steady rise in a dining trend over the past decade or so, centered around eating in the dark. From Switzerland to Germany to Canada and the US, more people seem ready to pay top dollar for this experience. CGTN's Alisdea Baverstock reports that blind dining has taken hold in Mexico City too, where it also has a charitable aim.
Dinner is served. Yet the blindfolded diners will consume a 4-course gourmet meal without ever seeing what they are eating. This is blind dining, which sees customers eating empty forkfuls, knocking over crockery and discerning what sort of wine they are drinking by listening to it.
It makes you concentrate far harder on flavors in order to decipher what the food is, which we often rely on our sight alone to do.
The idea behind blind dining is that through the deprivation of sight, a diner's senses of taste and smell are heightened, and when a person doesn't know what they are being served in advance, dinner becomes a sensory experience quite unlike any other. It was established in Mexico City by sommelier Rodrigo Marquez.
Y la experiencia la centramos en el maridaje.
We focus on wine pairings, with a different glass for each course, seeking the perfect match between the two, with the added particularity that you won't know what you're eating or drinking and you're in total darkness. So you're driving your senses into aromas and textures to see what you find.
Beyond a culinary experience, the project also seeks to raise awareness for those who are truly blind, a segment of Mexican society that often feels marginalized.
We so often take our sight for granted and forget that there are people who aren't as fortunate, so it certainly makes you value what you have.
Juan Saavedra is an advocate for the blind in Mexico City and says any effort that brings greater awareness of the disability is important.
What we have to do is to make people with visual impairments visible. It sounds bad saying that we have to integrate them into our society because they are already present, but so often they are simply invisible to us. So it's about breaking down these barriers, be they of fear or misunderstanding, with empathy with them as people. While blind dining may be a culinary adventure in itself, its founder says a greater empathy for the visually impaired makes his events even more worthwhile. Alistair Bavstock, CGTN, Mexico City.
Let's wrap up with a look at the currencies. And the South African rand was firmer against major currencies this afternoon, finding some support from global catalysts after the US and Mexico abutted a 5% tariff on Mexican imports, and as expectations rose that the US Federal Reserve might cut interest rates. However, domestic factors will continue to pose a risk to the rand as more economic data will be released this week, including mining and manufacturing production, as well as retail sales. And with that, we call it a day here on Global Business. We welcome your feedback. Send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platform. I am Peninah Karibe. Thank you for your company.